Okay, I'm very happy to be talking to Ali Cavanaugh today. Ali is an American artist who paints remarkable watercolor paintings on clay, which she calls modern frescoes. Her paintings have been featured online in things like the Huffington Post, Art Connoisseur and Juxtapoz magazine, to name but a few. And she's been in print magazines like the New York Times magazine and American Art Collector. Her paintings have been used on book covers. She's painted portraits for Time magazine and the New York Times. And her work is featured in more than 400 private and corporate collections throughout America, Europe, Asia and Australia. So, very impressive. So, hello Ali, it's very nice to be talking to you.
Thank you, John. Thank you for having me on.
You're welcome, it's great. Cavanaugh is a very Irish name, and your children all have Irish names. What's your connection with Ireland?
Well, I really don't have a connection at all. My husband my name is, that's my married name. And so I think his great-great-grandfather came over to New York from Ireland. And, I think he probably knows a little bit more about his lineage. Right. But all of my ancestors, my maiden name was Stewart, and all of my ancestors are English and Scottish.
Scottish, yeah, I was going to say Scottish, Stewart.
Yeah, I'm all Northern European ancestors, but nothing in Ireland that I found.
Oh, okay. And did you just like the Irish names all your children have Irish names, don't they? Or did I get that wrong?
I think kind of Irish. My husband has this thing that because he has a strong Irish name, he wanted to have Irish first names for the kids. Right. And that's sort of how that came about. Great. I don't think it's any more than that. And so I was given a small book of names to choose from by him. This is what you got. So.
And did you have trouble pronouncing them? Because some Irish names are very hard to pronounce if you're not used to it.
I think so. Yeah. Our first one is Neve and Finn. Finn's easy. Malachy and Saoirse. And I think Saoirse is probably going to be a little bit tougher for people in America. I'll probably have to spell it phonetically, and
probably because the Irish actress Saoirse Ronan.
Right.
We love her. Will probably help get it on people's ear a bit.
Well, that's what we thought, and when we were considering that name, 4 years ago, she was really kind of on the rise, and I haven't checked with her. I don't keep up with the stars and all that, but I don't know
she's
how
huge.
far.
She's huge. She's a close personal friend of mine. Yeah, she's huge.
Really?
No, she's not. I'm joking. She's not a friend of mine. But everybody has the idea that in Ireland everybody knows everybody else. So.
Yeah. Well, but the godmother, a very dear friend of mine, is Irish, and all of her family is still over there, and she goes back 2 or 3 times a year to see her family and stuff, and I would say that's my only connection to Ireland.
Good. Friendship. Well, that's not a bad one to have. Okay, so who are your creative heroes, Ali?
Well, I think there's so many times in an artist's life where you're inspired, like profoundly inspired by someone, and so I think back to the very first time that my high school art teacher, she was very influenced by the Impressionists. She was an incredible artist herself, but she was influenced a lot by John Singer Sargent. And so that influence and her telling me about him, teaching me about him. And then as, 15, 16-year-old, going to the art museum, the Chicago Art Museum, and looking at his work. And also I remember being very influenced by Mary Cassatt also. And there's something that happened there in the late 1800s, early 1900s with the Impressionists. Their compositions were so bold and modern. They're just so, I don't know if it was a photography influence or what, but
right.
I'm really drawn to that composition. So in a nutshell, the first time that I went to a museum with my art class in high school, we set up in the museum to work from a master. We could pick a painting, and then it was pastels, and we could work from a master. And I picked a Sargent portrait, and I did that. I remember that moment, and crowds gathering around me, like, oh my gosh, yes. and I felt that. I think that was the time I thought, this is it. Like, I just feel a magic here of just working with my art and working on the painting or the pastel drawing, painting, and people being influenced by it and asking questions. And that was there was
And
big inspiration there.
What age would you have
Oh,
been?
I think I was about 16
Right.
or 17,
Okay.
maybe at most.
And you
Maybe
didn't
10th or
find the
11th
crowds
grade.
around you intimidating or anything like that? You actually...
No, I loved
Oh,
it. I was
wow.
like, yeah, this is great. I think this is what I'm supposed to do. I really felt that at that time. I was like, yeah, I think art is the direction I'm supposed to go in. I didn't know specifically what. But at the same time, I was very, very, very in love with Andy Warhol. And this was the late 80s, and Andy had passed away a few years back. And so the thing that I loved about Andy, that, his career as an illustrator in the 50s, and I started out as an illustrator, but as illustrators in the 50s, and then in the 60s, he had the factory, and he was just doing his work, and it was amazing, bold. The factory was just crazy. I just loved that. I loved the freedom and all of it, and all the characters, and as a high school child, which we'll get into some other things down the line, maybe about my own wounds and how I never felt like I fit in. I've never
Right.
been a normal person, and in high school, that's difficult if you're not normal, if you don't really fit into a group. And I was an artist, and I liked to make all of my clothes, and I made my clothes out of bed sheets, and I did just the stuff that young art kids do.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
felt a connection with Andy Warhol in that. I felt like he was this individual that did not fit in. No one. You put Andy in an interview, and people are like, "What the heck?" It's just. I loved that. I loved that man so much, and so there's a huge influence there, and those are the ones that really stick out as kind of what's in my foundation. Is the bold compositions of Warhol, the guts of Warhol to just do what he wants to do. Don't think about trying to be like other people. Just do it.
Yeah, he really was one of a kind, wasn't he? There wasn't anyone
Yeah.
before or since really like him. Quite unusual.
His birthday was yesterday.
Yeah, I saw that somebody posted something. Yeah, I watched it. Did you watch the big long documentary that's been made about him? It's like 4 hours or something.
I have a couple of documentaries that they're older, so I don't know that I've seen the one you're talking about.
Yeah, I watched it like a couple of years ago, but I never knew that I never knew the way he died till that documentary.
Yeah.
That it was medical incompetence.
Yeah.
And he was afraid his whole life that he was going to die in a hospital of medical incompetence. So it's so
I know.
bizarre.
Yeah, because his early years were, with all that medical stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, I've watched a lot of documentaries, but I would say like in the last 10 or 15 years, I haven't really kept up with any new stories on him or anything like that.
Yeah. Well, he's gone from strength to strength. Really, he's like one of those artists who's just getting bigger, I think.
Yeah, people are truly time will be the test of everything, and over time, then people can really look back and see the genius of him specifically in the pop art movement.
Yeah. There was the soup cans that he did, the first set of soup cans he did.
Yeah.
There was a lovely story by the guy, I think it was in LA. It was a gallery owner, and he was interviewed in this documentary, and he was saying that he saw the soup cans. I think it was either 16 or 24. It was like a square grid of all these small, kind of smallish paintings of soup cans, and he wanted to buy them. As soon as he saw them, he wanted to buy them, and they were $1,000 in 1964 or something. And he bought them $100 a month off him. He made this deal with Andy, and he was everybody else was saying that the paintings are rubbish, right?
Yeah.
And he said, I really love them. And I said to Andy, I want to buy them. How much are they? $1,000. Okay, can I pay you $100 a month? Okay. And he brought them out to LA, and he sold them a couple of years ago. I think they were I think he sold them for some huge figure in the millions.
Millions. So yeah,
6 million comes to mind, but I think that doesn't sound like much now. But a huge amount. But it was lovely because he didn't care about the money really. He just loved them. Which is nice.
And that's how people should collect art. You shouldn't think about investments or what's going to happen in the future. We don't know the future, but if you love work and it moves you, you should get it and live with it and let it inspire you, because good art will, when it makes a connection with the person, it will inspire you every day.
Yeah. Yeah, I had Ashley Longshore on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and she was saying pretty much the same thing. If you see, you should throw everything out the window, and basically, do you love this piece of work? Do you love this painting, and do you want to make it part of your family? Like you're saying. She's actually very anti-gallery because of the high percentage that they take. How are you? You're very well represented by galleries. How do you feel about the whole gallery model and collectors and how that kind of business side of it?
Yeah. It's interesting because I think back in my art career, I graduated from art school in 1995. And in 1995, I think we had 2 computers in the library that you could get an email account on. You could get an AOL email account on. And I remember that thinking, and I didn't at the time, but it was, 1990 or 1994, 1995. And I thought, wow, look at what I've been through just in the 20 years that I've been doing my art career, and I've seen so many things change at the speed of light. I mean, it's incredible.
Yeah.
I've shown in galleries since 1994, even before I graduated college in the 90s, and then I have had. I can't even count all the galleries that I've been with through the years. It's changed, and social media. I remember in 2006 I started a blog, and I kept that blog up until about a year ago, and then I don't do the blog anymore. But so I have that was kind of that 2005 2006 was the big blogs. Everyone's and it was really before Facebook, and so you never know what the next thing is going to be, and then whenever it is the next thing and it's big, you don't know how long that's going to last.
That's right.
Because blogs are, there are ways you can network your phone and stuff to kind of keep up with the blogs that you like. But I think Instagram right now does seem like the biggest. Instagram seems like kind of the best place for artists to be right now, in my opinion, because it is visual. What's the point of it? It's about pictures. Yeah. People want to see art.
Yeah.
They want to see art, or if there's certain stars that they're in love with, musicians, then they want to see the behind the scenes of their musicians' lives or actors' lives and stuff like that. But Ashley, I think she's 100% right. I think she is right on the money, and I think she is a pioneer, just like she said what she would want to leave. Future generations is that break that mold and to show people that you don't have to be in a gallery. That we have so many more. We're I think all of us in all sorts of places in life, like for instance, the schools are so antiquated now. My son, that's 12 years old, he learns so much on YouTube. He's addicted to learning on YouTube. And watching, science experiments and social experiments. And it feeds him. And then he goes to school and they sit down with the books and the teacher teaches a lesson. And he's like, He's like, Mom, I'm pretty sure that I could learn so much more just staying at home watching YouTube.
Yeah.
And
Has he got onto the Khan Academy?
no, what is that?
The Khan Academy is a huge learning platform that was set up by this man called Khan, and it's very interesting. The story, which I don't think I remember exactly right, but he had a niece who needed some help with her homework, and he started to help her, and then he had to travel for business, so he started making these little videos about how to do algebra, and it just grew out of that. Now there's this huge non-profit learning thing. Free, all free, and it's fantastic. You can pretty much learn anything you want. It's great for kids in school.
It sure is. It sure is. I mean,
KHA.
Okay. I'm gonna look that up.
I'll put a link in the show notes. That's, as they say, in all good podcasts.
A lot of parents need that right now because I just had a daughter in college. I've got a 12-year-old in middle school, and I've got a kindergartner starting this year and a preschooler. And I've seen it. I've seen the internet, what you can get on the internet, just completely blow away what the old model of education. And and everyone is like walking around ignoring the elephant in the room. And we've got to keep all these jobs. I think it's just kind of like, I don't know where it's going, but I think that we need to accept it, and we need to move on and figure it out, figure out the new way, because the college.
Sorry,
go ahead.
No, you
go ahead.
No, I'm interviewing you. You go ahead.
No, I was going to say the same thing, which you were talking with a guest, one of your other podcasts, that young Ashley girl that's doing amazing things. You asked her about it, and she's too like, all this money. We all know deep in our core that it's not right. Why are colleges costing so much money? Yeah. And we're graduating these kids from art school $200,000 debt. Yeah. And I'm sorry, I'm a fairly successful working artist. You cannot pay $200,000 back. You just can't do that. It's not going to work. Yeah. Something's wrong, and I think our parents, the generation before us, they had so much success with going to college and getting a job. They don't realize everything is just completely different now, and so you get that pressure from the older generation. You got to go to college, you got to get this degree. It's really just a huge waste of money. My daughter went to her first year of college, and she told me that every single teacher, there was only one. I won't say that. I'm not going to bad talk any teachers, because there were some good ones, but she said there was only one class that she took the entire year where she actually learned a skill. Wow. And everything else was political talk, or people discussing and philosophies and stuff like that. So she said it was a computer. It was like an intro into computers, where it was like, we are learning a trade right now. So that's pretty sad, but I think that is the state. And I'm painting with a very broad brush right now, and I know that there are programs that are very specific, even in art schools. Yeah.
Well, it's that balance, really, isn't it? Because on the one hand, everybody had, if they're lucky, an inspiring teacher. Right. Like you were saying about that art teacher that you had. So on the one hand, you've got that, and on the other hand, you've got everything you've been saying about how the model is so antiquated. So it's sort of somewhere between, I think, isn't it? Yeah.
But to get back to your question of the gallery, that's your question: are galleries really needed anymore? And it's kind of like, are schools really needed anymore? For some people, yes. For other people, maybe not. And I think what I've learned is that you make your own life. You make your reality. Ashley, that you talked to, Longshore, for example, she has a very specific goal, and it is to make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. And her clients her art is paintings of trophy wives. Yeah. She deals with hedge funders. That is her market. She loves them. She loves hitting that market. She loves making the money. that is the goal that she has made. That's where she has set the bar.
Yeah.
And she will achieve that. Wherever you set the bar, you will achieve it. You have to be very clear as to what you want to do with your art. You know, there's so many different things, and if you want to make very pretty, simple paintings that look great in interiors, and you can make a lot of them, a high quantity for, you know, kind of a low quality art, and you want to work with some galleries that are very connected to interior designers that outfit houses, and, you know, that's the route you want to go. That's great. That's great. You can make a lot of money. You need to always have something changing. You always need to be on trend with your work. You need to understand that is what your work is about, trend. And so it needs to stay on trend. So you can't take your work too seriously and think, you know, I've got the styles change, now I'm irrelevant, and take it personally, I guess. You know, you just have to think, you have to really figure out who you are. And, you know, I mentor a lot of artists, and you know, you just sit and talk to someone, you can find out who they are and what they're making, what kind of art they're making, why they're making it, what they want to get out of it. And there's a plan for them. And sometimes galleries are the way to go for them. Actually, this last year has been a big change for me, the last 2 years, but I'm in the process of scaling down a lot of my representation, because I was represented in 10 galleries in the world, and it just gets kind of over. I'm not a factory, you know. It started very innocently. I just had one gallery, and then another gallery invited me into a show, and they loved my work, and I loved them, because you fall in love with your gallery owners, and then it becomes a marriage, and you are good friends, and they're like family. And so they want another piece, and so you send them another piece, and then another gallery invites you, and you just love them, and you love who they're representing, and you give a piece. And that's kind of how it grew for me. And then I had, like, I'm just way overrepresented, and I have way too many mouths to feed. And at the same time, my work was becoming more and more mature and intense and concentrated, and so I was making less paintings at a higher quality because I was developing my palettes and my technique and all stuff. And then, you know, I just felt like, you know, I got to pull everything back in right now and regroup.
When you say you had a lot of mouths to feed, you're talking about the different galleries?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah. Because a gallery, to take an artist on, they want to know that you're going to be able to produce enough work for them to make money.
Right.
And I don't know if you read this. I saw this article circulating this week. I think it was a German guy wrote an article about all this research he had done on American galleries. I don't know if it was just American galleries, but I think it was a lot of American galleries. He did research as to their finances, their business model, basically, and why they're all going bankrupt, and why he put in there in the article that the galleries need to make 70% and the artists make 30% to be able to break even.
Right.
And, you know, every artist is going to just scream when they read that, because, you know, we feel like all the cards are stacked against us, because we, you know, we buy the materials, which are very expensive. We pay for the shipping. You know, the gallery gets all their merchandise. They have a store. They get all their merchandise for free.
Right.
For a year. And they don't pay a dime for that free merchandise, you know?
Yeah.
And then we're bound to keep our work there. So, you know, say we go and find a collector that wants that painting that, you know, the gallery has and has had for like a year, maybe 11 months or something. And, you know, there's a lot of pressure on the artist to do the right thing. I've always done the right thing. I've never cheated someone. In fact, I mean, I had one show in 2009, and I think there were like 20 paintings in the show, maybe 30, but I can't remember. It was like, let's say 20 paintings. And I had pre-sold, I had a little opening show here in my little town, my little small town, and I sold 7 paintings here in this town. but the show was already committed for, it was in Memphis. It was a big show. So it was committed to Memphis. So I then, after my show here, it was like April, and then the show opened in Memphis in June, something like that. I had to say, okay, here's the 7 paintings, and here's all the names and numbers, and they will, send you the check. I had to give the gallery half of all those sales.
Oh, wow.
There are things like that, ethical choices that you have to make. It's always worth it to be ethical, because the money is not worth it. The greed is not. It's not worth it in the end. It's for your honesty and your integrity. So that hurts, though. It hurts. And I had one gallery that had a buyer for a painting that was at another gallery, and then both galleries wanted 30%. So that was going to leave 60% for them. And I'm just like, I said, no, send me the painting. No one is getting the painting, not even the collector. I'm not selling it to anyone. It's my painting now. It's like, come on, people. It's so much greed too. But the article that I referenced, this guy in Germany, I think his end point was that the rent is too high for places. Oh. We've got these big city galleries, and the rent is extremely high. And that is where it all comes down. These galleries have to turn out a lot of sales to be able to pay those rents. Wow. And the internet is free, and the internet reaches a lot of people. The only problem that I have is the only problem with the internet, selling art on the internet, is people don't get to actually see the work. They see an image. Some work does not photograph well.
Yeah.
And you miss that the spirit of the piece is not, it's hard to get that to come through. And so I think it's important that we have places for art to be, so that people can go and see the work. And that's always been the reason why I've stayed with galleries, is that I really want people to see my work in person. I want them to say, they write me like, oh, where can I see your work? And, oh, I have these galleries and these pieces. And they go and they see them and they love them and they buy them,
Yeah.
They need to see the work. Now, when you get to a level where your work has a name for itself and people want to collect your name, they at that point, when you get to that point, they can do with just an image.
Yeah.
They can say, yeah, that I'll trust the reputation that I hear from my friends that have collected this artist, and that piece looks good, send it to me. That it does get to that point. And I think that's where Ashley's at, for sure.
Yeah.
She's got her connections that she worked very hard to build up, and all of her clients and stuff. And that is where it, and the problem with someone like me that has built a reputation up in the galleries is that the galleries have the collectors, and they don't, that's their property.
Yeah.
They can't just give me that. And if I were to ask for my collectors, which if I leave a gallery, I will do that. But my purpose is to catalog them. So in the future, if there's a retrospective somewhere or something, then I would be able to get in contact with the people.
Yeah.
Say the gallery goes out of business or something and things go. Yeah. I mean, it's important to do that from a documenting, archival standpoint, but they're not going to give you those collectors. Whereas if you're starting from the ground up, I guess, so here's my advice to the younger artists out there that are building it up, and, don't necessarily go with the gallery. You don't have to.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's important to have shows, but you can get places to give you shows too that you organize, maybe co-ops or alternative spaces, or, even coffee shops, for the young artists and stuff. You start out never getting in the trap of the gallery, and then you would be able to always keep track of those clients. And that's very important. You got to understand these young people. If I'm speaking to young people out there that are starting an art career, have those, every single person that has ever bought anything from you, even if they only paid $10, $20 or something, make sure you have their name. That is your gold mine. And those people are going to grow up and have money and buy more expensive paintings as you grow up and have more expensive paintings. So it all will grow with you. But it's difficult for, someone like me to say, I'm going to pull everything out and not have any representation. Just because I have a few collectors that I've gotten to know, but not enough to really, I would say, support without that.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Well, your social media presence is pretty good, though, isn't it?
Right. And I do see myself moving out of the gallery thing. I do. I mean, I do see that eventually, I have to be honest, because I realize that the gallery is an antiquated thing, but I do see their importance. I'm not like bashing them. All my galleries have been wonderful to me.
But with your social media presence, and the nice thing about the whole social media side of it is that, you can just, it's easy enough to just say, if there's any collectors out there, get in touch, kind of thing.
Right.
Get in touch with me directly,
exactly. And they do. Yeah. I mean, it works. It's definitely, it's kind of like what I was telling you with Ashley, like she set her bar, she set her expectations, and she will live to that. Whatever you set your bar at, your expectations, you will rise to that, and the world will come to that.
Yeah.
It's just a really, really neat thing. And I think that's probably one of like the best kept secrets in life. And I'm not sure it's a secret because I think a lot of people know it, but the younger generations might not understand something that you gain with wisdom, but you realize that life is what you make it. Yeah. You will achieve the goals that you set. I've seen it happen year after year after year. And I set new goals, and then by the end of the year, they're achieved. And it's like, wow, the power of just putting something on paper and having it happen.
Right. Do you do your own social media?
I do. I do all of my own social media. I have since, like I said, in 2006, I started getting like a solid, I think I even got a website in the 90s, and it was cute and kind of rough around the edges, primitive, but cool. And then I started, I think maybe 2003, 2004, I got, allycavanaugh.com. And it was in 2006 that I actually made it on WordPress with a blog. So my website was the blog. Yeah. And I archived all of my work on there, and I still have that website. That's not my current website, but I'm getting ready to have a link to that, because that old website was all of my work archived every year, which is kind of neat. That's kind of neat for people that are collecting to see that. But every time something new comes up, I join in, and Facebook I started, and I'm trying to think. LinkedIn, I'm not really active on that. I don't really tweet. I think Instagram is really where it's at. I think Facebook has morphed into something with a lot of drama. Yeah. And it's heavy, and it's not, it's, I don't know. I feel like we're losing a lot of people every day on that. So that's what it is, but Instagram is so easy. It's approachable. It's light. It's quick. And I really think if you are an artist, you need to be on Instagram. That is without a doubt.
Yeah, certainly right now.
Right.
Who knows what it'll be, as you say, next year. But for right now, it's the thing.
Right. And like you said, these things can change. And another thing is, Instagram is what it is too. And, you get numbers, you get likes, and you can't take that stuff too seriously. You can and you can't. You have to keep it in its place. And it is social media. It changes. Instagram's big now, but, something else is going to come up later. And it's going to be even better. And then you switch over to that. And you always have to be current and really kind of stay on top of it. Luckily, I had my daughter, who's 20 now. She helps me navigate these things. But yeah, I do it all on my own. I mean, it's like, how do I get a rectangle into a square? I remember that when I first got Instagram, and she, shows me how to do that and everything. So if you're my age, I'm in my early 40s, you do sometimes need to get the younger kids to help you out and get all the tricks and learn. I mean, like my daughter said, Mom, you got to use emojis. If you don't use emojis, you're just really scary. So, emojis can be good, not overused, but, she tells me the etiquette, which is good because I wouldn't realize these things. I'm like, I don't need to put, hearts and stuff. I mean, that's just silly. But she just said, Mom, you really have to show a little bit of emotion, not tons, but anyway, yeah, that was just one little tip. But
and are you starting to sell from Instagram or directly?
Well, I haven't even done that yet.
Right.
I haven't. Well, I can't say that I haven't. I did. I sold. Okay. I don't want to get ahead of myself. There's a new body of work that I started this year, and in that body of work, I did a lot of little experimental pieces. And these experimental pieces were very small, like 3 inches by 5 inches. Right. And so I posted them on my Instagram, said, these are for sale. Contact me if you're interested. And they all sold in 25 minutes.
Wow.
So, yeah, you can sell work. You can sell work very, very easily. Prints, very successful if I do a run of prints. I noticed that Instagram, there are good collectors that are on Instagram, but it's a lot of younger people, a lot of kids, teenagers, young 20s. Those kind of guys they're not going to put a lot of money into art at this point. They're mostly following you to be inspired.
Yeah.
So I found that actually Facebook makes more solid sales.
Oh, okay.
And I think Facebook's hitting a market that's a little older too. So I think Facebook is what I found. If I've put things out there that are for sale, I haven't had one. I'll tell you one thing that I did was, gosh, what year? Maybe 2008, 2009, 2010, around those years. I was in a group called what was it? The Daily Painters. It was called the Daily Painters, and they had a website, and I want to say that it had, I don't know, 100 artists or something, or maybe more. But every day you would post a painting, and it would be these daily painters. They paint every day, which the work kind of was smaller works, which were more affordable works. And I was in that, and I would do these little paintings, like 6 by 6 inches, 8 by 8 inches. And I'm telling you, that was my bread and butter for a few years, because every time I posted it, I mean, within minutes it was sold. Wow. Minutes. That was a great platform. I got a lot of collectors there. And I think that they're still in existence. And, I just left because I needed to move on to bigger work, I found that focusing on smaller work like that, although it was making a lot of money, it was getting me trapped into like this simple thing that I wasn't really able to get my bigger concepts out.
Yeah. So
that's why I moved on from it. But I had a lot of success, and I would say that that would be a really good thing for people that are starting out. And it would, every day the page would open up, and it would have a grid of who posted that work. And so there might just be on your computer screen 50 new paintings that day, and they were all probably under $400.
Right.
Under $300. It's a lot were, $100, and good artists on there too, incredible artists. So yes, art can be sold on the internet without a doubt. I don't have a doubt about that. My problem right now is, my bigger paintings, the very expensive large paintings. I have those in galleries right now, so right. I'm not really pushing that. I haven't made that a goal. I guess you could say I haven't made that a goal to put that on the internet to push that. But any of my smaller stuff that it sells almost instantly through the internet.
I heard that some of the more mature and heavy hitting kind of collectors use Instagram, that if they're thinking about buying something, like an expensive piece, they'll put it on Instagram. Then maybe they'll put like two, if they're thinking of 2 different paintings they're going to buy, they'll put them both up, and whichever one gets the most likes will influence them as to which one to buy.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. Apparently a lot of there are a lot of big collectors who use Instagram, but they do it, anonymously kind of thing. So they just
sure do.
Go and look at you.
Yeah, I was going to say they sure do. I have a story that, a very, very very good collector, let's say that, has contacted me through my Instagram. And we're in the process of doing a commission, but he said, I hope this is the first of many of your paintings that will be in my house. So
it's not Leonardo DiCaprio, is it?
No, I wish. No. No, this guy, no, it's a good, let me just say, it's a good collector, but
I'm joking. There's this thing going around that he bought a painting off Instagram.
Really?
I don't know if it's true. It's been reported as true, but that he saw a painting in a gallery in Holland and got in touch and bought it for, I don't know, a couple of $100,000 or something. But anyway.
Well, we need to hear stories like that, and it's like, I don't want to brag or anything to say that, but I think it's really important for other artists to hear that, and it gives them hope that you can succeed with your art on Instagram.
Yeah.
You can on social media and whatever it is next after Instagram.
Great. There you are.
But you've
heard it now from Ali Cavanaugh, so it's great.
I think the only thing that I guess the only word of encouragement that I want to give for the artists that are going that route and doing the, Instagram thing is when you're not getting followers, when you're not getting likes, it can hurt. It can hurt. I did Instagram for a year and wasn't really getting any followers, and I just was not getting likes. And I would I remember thinking like, my niece who's in 10th grade, she would post something like of her petting a horse and she would get like 100 likes instantly. And I'm like, all I can get today is 15 likes. And I'm like, oh, you know what I'm saying? You can play those sort of comparison games and drive yourself insane. And it's not reality. You always have to realize that, stay focused on what you're doing. Internet, the Instagram, the internet, all that, it's a tool, but it doesn't dictate your value and if you're even making good art or not, so.
Yeah, because there's another thing about Instagram is that because it's small, because most people look at it on a phone, they're sort of saying that, and you kind of said it a little bit as well, that not everything lends itself, but also it kind of forces artists to make graphic, bold, instantly vibrant kind of paintings, because you won't get the subtleties on Instagram of maybe a bigger picture,
Well, and I've seen that trend happening even before Instagram. I feel like that is the product of artists being on the internet, looking at everyone else's work, and it sort of refines this work collectively of our, of the generation that is painting right now, to like be inspired by images that are graphic. I'm not sure that it's a conscious thing, but, I've always been inspired by Warhol and, all those impressionists that did such interesting things with composition. Composition is something I've always really loved, but I know that I've seen that too, exactly what you're saying. I've seen it seems like it's getting simpler and simpler and simpler. And I know for a fact, if I put a small piece that fits in a square and it's a smaller piece and there's like a bigger composition there and it fills up the space, that's going to get more likes than this big painting with multi-figures that took me a year. In the real presence of those paintings, the big one is a serious work of art that people love. And, that would be in a museum, or not saying my work, but I'm just saying in general, the bigger piece would be in a museum and it would be taken more seriously than this little tiny thing. But the tiny thing is what's going to get likes. Yeah. So again, it's one of those things you gotta, as an artist, you gotta remember that and don't come back to your studio, put the internet away, make work that is real, push yourself and don't, just try to limit yourself to work that's going to get attention in a little screen.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. A good tip I heard for the bigger pictures is to put somebody standing beside it.
Yep. And I did that. I did that with my last group.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you need to do.
with your paintings all have very considered names. How do you come up with the names, and when do you come up with them? Do you come up with the name first and then paint the picture, or do you do it afterwards?
No, I come up with the name at the end. When I am working with I mostly painted my daughter Neve from the 90s up until last year when she went away. She's now happily married and living a wonderful life, but she doesn't live in our state anymore. She lives 3 hours away. So I knew, leading up to that departure that, things were going to change for me, but that's another story. To answer your question though, about the titles, when Neve lived with me, like for so many years and I painted her, and she was she's a professional model too. So, she's a beautiful girl. When she's just moving through the house, she's just making some cereal or making some bread or whatever. And it's like, that is a painting. That is a painting. That is so beautiful. I have to capture that moment. Like, she's just this beautiful moving sculpture that lives with me. And so there were so many times daily that I would be inspired by her, and I would just quick catch that image, on my phone or whatever, camera or phone, whatever I've got near me.
Yeah.
And then when I sit and review them on my computer and I think, which one here really needs to be painted. And then I find one that speaks to me, that's the art is a language, and it's different than speaking with words. It's the image that connects to a very deep place in my core. And I don't have words to describe that, but I know that I need to paint it. So I paint it. And during the process of the painting, I'm thinking, what is this about? I always look for the message that the painting is trying to tell me. I feel like there is something that the process of making that art and that finished painting, it has told me and taught me something about myself. And so after I'm done painting, I just spend some time with it, staring at it, and it tells me what it's supposed to be titled. It's not like a vocal word, but it comes to me.
Yeah.
It just comes to me.
So the names then are more about the effect of painting the picture that's had on you, rather than what's going on in the picture.
I think so.
Okay,
right.
Yeah.
Right. It's not my paintings are not illustrations of something specifically happening.
Right.
They are, paintings that invoke something deep in me, an emotion in me, and then that is what the title is.
Right. Great. It looks like the year 2000 was a big year for you, if I'm reading this right, because around that time you left the atelier or the studio that you'd started, the school. You moved to Santa Fe. You converted to Catholicism, and you switched to watercolors. Am I right? Did that all happen roughly around the same time?
That happened in about a 5 or 6 year era.
Okay. And did something happen did that just happen gradually, or was there some cathartic event that launched you into all that change?
Well, I think that first of all, I'm from St. Louis. That's where I have returned now for the last 8 years. My family has lived here. But when I graduated high school, I went up to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and went to art school there, and then met my husband and got married, and we started our family right away, and we had a little house. And I was very involved with my art. I did lots of things. I did murals. I painted portraits. I made all of my daughter's clothes. I did, I was just this kind of like, I would really be into Pinterest at that time. I'm not into Pinterest right now, but it was kind of like that sort of thing, like in the 90s. I was lots of, just art everywhere around me. I did a show, like every 2 years I would do a solo show. And my art was about my being a mother and re-experiencing family life through my new family. What I want to say there is I should say my childhood was not happy, and I had a drug addicted father that abandoned my mother and I. And so there was a deep hole in my childhood that of sadness. And
Right.
so art was just so important for me to be able to take that that isolation that you have if you experience trauma as a child, and you go deep with it. You go very, very deep, and it's covered by a lot of layers. But my art could go to that spot, and I could get release from that. So,
Right.
these are things that I discovered in the 90s when I had my daughter, that I had a family. I had control over my world now, and I had, I had a loving husband. I was a loving father, and I could enjoy that. And it was very healing for the own inner child that I had.
Yeah.
And so, I did that's when we started the school, and another girl and we were teaching after we graduated art school, and we had a following that wanted to learn from us. And so we set up big studios, and it was wonderful. And, but I got to where, I don't just do things like, I go way overboard with everything I do. I was teaching 60 hours a week.
Right.
Okay. That's insane. And after 2 years, there were times when I had 4 portrait classes in one day. So I was doing a portrait demo from 9 to 12, 12 to 3, 3 to 6, 6 to 9. I'll never forget that session that I had that. Talk about burnout. And I could not, I realized a lot about teaching, in that it wasn't good for me. I like to mentor. I love mentoring kids and artists and people at all levels, but actually sitting down and teaching the technical stuff, it just takes too much out of me, and it's not healthy for me personally. And other people have that gift. But so I burned out on that, and then I knew that I had to get out of Grand Rapids. Now, Grand Rapids now is a booming city with tons of art, and it's an amazing place to be. But in the 90s, it wasn't. It was like there's an art school there, and there's so many artists, and there's no one coming to West Michigan to buy art.
Right.
That's what I saw. I saw, this is suicide. I'm never going to go anywhere with my art, because this is not a place where collectors come. So we moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico. And in 2000, 2001, around that time. And that's when there was a big change in my life. And then I went into a city where everyone's either an artist or a writer, and they're very successful. So I had a lot of mentors around me, a lot of models that I could follow. There's over 200 galleries in a 1-mile strip.
Wow.
In Santa Fe. It was where I needed to be. And so then going there also, I just fell in love with the history there, and the Catholic Church in that culture was just beautiful. Mm-hmm. The art in the churches, and I just got sucked in. It was amazing. And just the celebration of the culture. Well, you've got like 3 cultures there in Santa Fe. You have the Native Americans, you have the Northern New Mexicans, and you have the Mexicans. And then you have the Anglos, which were kind of the outsiders coming in. But I felt a lot of love in the Catholic Church and it was the church that had been there since 1600s, and it was just very beautiful experience. But I was still doing oils at that time. I was still painting. I painted in oils and after I got out of art school, and then through the 90s, and then 2005, I think, was my last show in oils. And my goal was that I wanted to get in a gallery in Santa Fe. That was my goal. And so I would take my work. I would, every single Friday they have like the open galleries and stuff, the gallery walks. So I would take my 2 little kids. I had one in a stroller, and my daughter, I think, was maybe 9 or 10, around that age. And we would walk down that street every day, or every Friday, and we would go in those galleries, and I made friends. Right. And then I got to a point where I said, here's my work. What do you think? And all of them just were like, no, it's not really, it's good. We see it's very good. It's a little dark. Like it was too intense. I'll tell you, that's what it was. It was too dark and too intense. And had not learned the finesse of harnessing in certain things
Right.
to make a better work of art. You don't have to, I still have that art school fire in me of just, put it in there.
Right.
Everyone needs to see everything. But that was the time when I started really getting into my faith
Right.
around 2005. And I started asking for the Blessed Mother to intercede for me. I started praying to the saints. I mean, I love the saints. Like, that is the thing that pulled me into the church, is the saints, and knowing like all of our ancestors and that have been here on earth, they've made it to the other side, and they can help us, And so that just was like miraculous for me. And so I started, putting myself, making myself vulnerable, being open to what's not working in my art, not what's not
Yeah.
working in my art, because it's not being accepted in these galleries. And so then as interesting story, a guy was doing some work for us on our house. He was putting in new windows in our house, and I wanted a courtyard built, and I asked him if he would barter for art, and he said, "Oh, let me talk to my wife." And they had like 6 kids or something. It was like a family of 8. I don't know. It was a big family. And he came back. He said, "My wife loves watercolor. Can you do a watercolor portrait of our family?" And he put like a big, adobe courtyard in our house. So I said, "Yeah, I can figure that out. I can do it." I'm thinking in my head, I can figure that out. And so I went to the art store and got this huge piece of watercolor paper, and I did this portrait for him. And he loved it. And, we loved our barter and everything. That was great. And what happened was, when the art store gave me that piece of paper, they accidentally gave me 2 pieces of paper. And so I thought, well, I have this big piece of watercolor paper here. I just chopped it into 3 pieces. And I did the same exact thing that I painted in oil. I just did it in a watercolor, a little quick monochromatic watercolor. And I did a
Right.
series of 3 of them. And so I was getting ready to have a show in Austin at the Wally Workman Gallery, and I took my oil paintings there. And my oil paintings had gotten to a place where Wally took me. No one in Santa Fe took me, but Wally, she saw something and she took me. And then I framed up these 3 watercolors. And when I went to that show, I'm thinking, oh, I want people to like the oils and stuff. But everyone kept congregating around these watercolors, and they were just like, "These are so incredible." And I'm like, "You gotta be kidding." In my head, I'm thinking, this was so fun. Like, I didn't even work at this. Like, this wasn't even, I didn't even try. This was just something for fun. I'm not saying that, but in my head, I'm thinking, why is everyone responding to these? So in that drive home from Texas to Santa Fe, that whole drive, I just thought, this is a sign. This is what I've been asking for. You ask and you will receive. It may take time, and you have to be open. You have to have humility. You have to be open to hear what the message is that's being given to you when you ask. Okay. And so I had asked for something with my art to change, because it wasn't going like I was wanting it to go. So anyway, I went back, and the whole drive back, I'm thinking, I have to do some watercolors. I have to get into these watercolors, because I think there's something here. And so I went to the art store, and I got like 4 more pieces of paper, chopped them up into 3 more, each had 3 things. And each big piece could chop into 3 pieces of the composition that I liked. And I just started doing these simple figures with a white space. And then I felt like, okay, then I had a group. You had to have a group of like 10 paintings to take to galleries and stuff. And I was at a place with these galleries that I was frequenting that I could just walk in and talk to them. I didn't need to do anything formal. But I took these watercolors in, and I mean, everyone was like, "I love these." Everyone loved them. And you could tell by the look on their face when they loved something.
Yeah.
But there was a big but. And I was like, what? It's like nothing sells behind glass anymore on Canyon Road. And that's not true for every gallery out there. I'm just saying for Canyon Road in Santa Fe, the print market had become so popular that to have a watercolor behind glass, matted behind glass, for them it reads as print, not real watercolors. Right. So that was my next dilemma is, I had to get off the paper. And at that same time, we bought a fixer-upper house that I was doing the old, they call it diamond trowel plaster in Santa Fe, but it's the old like Venetian plaster over chicken wire. And I was doing it in my house. I was, making these beautiful plaster walls. And I thought, what is fresco and what is, can't I do watercolor on clay? And it all sort of started coming together. And so I started researching it. And then I found that there was a company in Austin, Texas, of all places, that makes these art panels for artists with an archival clay veneer on them. And it was like magic. It was like, wow, I can't believe this. And so I got a hold of them. I ordered them. I custom ordered them. And I remember my first 2 paintings on it, and they were just completely experimental. And I took it back to one gallery that I was really kind of focusing in on, that I wanted to be in. I took these paintings back to them, and they said, yes, this is it. This is it. And they were like so excited. And they said, okay, in 4 months we are going to the Affordable Art Fair in New York, and we want to take your work, and we need, as many paintings as you can get us. And I think I got them like 7 or 8 paintings. And I'll say I was talking to them like in January or something. And so then by June was when they were leaving. So, by May I had a group of paintings for them to take, and they took them, and they came back, and they were all sold. And they said, people are freaking out. Like they've never even seen this before. Like, what is this? It was just kind of like magic. And what's so weird is that I didn't change my model. I was still painting the same person, the same figure that I had been painting in oil, but something about that clay just made it look so light and bright. And the watercolors like illuminates on the surface. And, it was just the right combination. And a lot of times I'm looking, now that I've been through that cycle, I realize when other artists, I see them and I think, and this is why I love to mentor, is because, you see one little stumbling block that they have, and it's like, gosh, 75% or 80% is right on, but this, 10-20% that they're doing wrong, if they just got rid of that, that they could get it. They could get that special spark. There's that one little thing but a lot of times artists, we're so isolated. We don't have good, there are groups of artists that get together and really support each other, and they do in the bigger cities and stuff. But, a lot of artists, for the most part, we're isolated, and we don't get the feedback that we need. Then we kind of feel defeated and never really get off the ground when there is some real beautiful paintings that can be made, or sculptures. So, that's kind of, I guess I need to finish up with the whole Santa Fe. The question was, that time period. That was about a 6 or 7 years. No, it was 7 years that we were in Santa Fe. And that entire time I went to Santa Fe with the expectation that I was going to make a living at my art. I was going to make it happen. And by the time I ended there, and what had happened kind of behind the scenes of why we left Santa Fe is my husband was involved in the mortgage industry, and he owned a mortgage company. And so that he could see in 2007 that there was going to be a collapse. He could just see it. So we got out of Santa Fe before we had to sell. We were able to sell our house and all that. So and at that time, the year before my dad died, and I I just felt like a need that I wanted to come back to Missouri and be closer to my family and
Yeah.
my sister and my aunt and my mom, and so that was why we moved. And we could move here, and it just costs so little to live here, and it's safe, and good friendships and stuff like that. So it was a perfect transition for me to move back to Missouri because my life is very quiet here, and the kids can play in the streets. It's just like 50 years ago. They play kickball in the streets. There's tons of kids on the street. Every house has kids. It's that sort of thing. It just feels very old fashioned.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that I can go to the grocery store, the bank, and I can have like 5 errands and I'll be back to my house in 20 minutes. And it's just, I love that piece. And it gives me space to really do my art.
That's the end of the first part of this long conversation with Ali, and the next part will be out next week.
I've never felt this good in my entire life. Make me some spaghetti. Yeah, we are the Argyle Temps, so buy us a drink. We're better than you thought, but not as good as we think. We are the Argyle.